One of the things we enjoy the most about cooking with our Bertazzoni Steam Oven is the fact that it simplifies the process of cooking. When we cook with a steam oven, it's quite easy to cook multiple foods at one time. Here we're steaming artichokes, some farro, and cooking some hard-boiled eggs all at once. Even though we're very spoilt with this amazing segmented cooktop that features induction and gas burners, we do often find that preparing foods in the steam oven just takes some of the stress out of cooking. Today we're going to prepare a fairly labor-intensive, extremely delicious lobster lasagna. The first thing we're going to do is prepare the lobster tails that we're going to use in the lasagna. Now we have two options. We could steam the lobster tails or we could steam roast them. We've decided to steam roast them because this way we have a slightly stronger flavor. We've put a little bit of herb butter under each one of the lobster tails, and as they cook, the juices from the lobster and the butter will meld together, and then we'll take all those juices and we will add them to the sauce. Once the lobster tails are cooking, Chef Paul is going to boil some water for the pasta. When it comes to boiling water, Induction does it faster than any other heat source. When it comes to preparing a bechamel sauce, you need to use a burner that has very moderate heat. The first step is to melt the butter. Then of course we're going to stir in the flour. And this is where the low and slow is important, because that flour mixture, the roux, needs to cook for about 5 minutes so that the flour is no longer raw. Then it's time to turn your attention to adding the milk and then the stirring with the whisk to ensure you have a flavorful sauce with no lumps. This recipe we're using also calls for some sauteed spinach and garlic, so we're using the larger capacity 18,000 BTU burner set to a very moderate temperature so that we can slightly poach the chopped garlic and then fold in the spinach to wilt it. Now that the lobster tails have finished their cooking, Paul is going to do the heavy lifting, and that involves cooling them down and then getting the lobster meat out of the shells. Now that we have all the components for the lasagna prepared, it's time to assemble the lasagna. We are going to put the lasagna back in the steam oven to cook it. Practically every recipe you read for lasagna gives you a simple direction to cover the lasagna with foil. And that can be a bit tricky because you don't want the foil to sit on the cheese and have the cheese stick to it. But if you have a Bertazzoni steam oven, you'll choose the combination convection steam mode and you'll put your lasagna back in the oven without any covering, because the steam that's created with the foil over the dish is already being generated by the oven. If you need to melt the cheese just a little bit more, you can always change the mode to the broiling or toasting element for the last few minutes to get a really lovely bubbling of the cheese or slight crisping of the pasta if that's the way you like it. Learning to use your Bertazzoni steam oven is really not that difficult. All it really takes is just to think a little bit about what the recipe is guiding you to do and realize that any time you're covering something, you're creating steam. And in your steam oven, you can skip that step because you have all the steam you need.